Hello, beautiful people. I'd like to talk about a subject that I find rather fascinating, that I always have since I was a kid. Two things that the American public has been fascinated with on TV and throughout our history, from literature and many things written. That's flight, and then within flight having to do with unidentified flying objects, dating back to the time of Icarus, the old story when the boy built wings and flew so close to the sun, the wax on his wings melted and he died. He fell. And time travel. The book The Time Machine was one of the best books I'd ever read, and it starts to really open your eyes to the possibilities and the dangers of time travel. And there have been movies like The Butterfly Effect and all of these things about time travel. Well, the reason why I'm recording this video is because I wanted to talk about a supposed hypothesis that I had. I had a dream, and I was debating whether to talk about this or not, but why not? Fuck it. Somebody has to. No one actually has, and I think a lot of people are actually afraid to say it because of the possibilities and the ramifications of it. But from what I've been studying, in the Nazi Bell Project, that is the project where the Nazis and the Thule Society and the Vril Society, these are the three chains of command in the Nazi society. First, you have the front guys, which are the Nazis, the SS, which everybody blames for everything. Then you have the Thule Society, which is the inner chain of command behind the Nazis, that are not as secret as the Nazis, but are actually more secret than the Nazis, but close-knit. And then within the Thule Society, the people that control the Thule Society is the Vril Society, the secret society behind the Thule Society and the Nazi Society. The power behind the power behind the power. Things that I've studied and uncovered while studying the Vril is that they possibly discovered time travel. One of the things that I do know is after Hitler cracked the DNA code from experimenting on his own people, they disappeared. And what I mean by Hitler experimenting on his own people, most people don't know, is Hitler was a Rothschild. He was the grandson of one. His grandmother was a Jew. First town he attacked, that was her town, and he blew up the library to burn any facts that he was actually related to the Hebrew bloodline and the Anasazi Rothschilds. So in the Nazi occupation, what you actually have is the so-called imperialist Jews that started communism in Russia, and then they saw communism didn't work, so then they went to Germany and started their new movement, the socialist movement. And then they found Hitler, and then, they have Nazism. These are all the Rothschilds, these are all the Freemason societies, the people that are behind all the wars and everything that you thought different people had a hand in. Well, they have a hand in it. So in the Nazi occupation, what you have is the so-called imperialist Jews experimenting on the so-called unfit Hebrews of Russia, of Eastern Europe, from around the world. So they claim to, hate Jews. Well, I'm an Afro-American man, and one of the biggest problems in the Afro-American society that they've ingrained into this society, because we got this from them, because this is what they do in our society, it's called self-hate. So this is a very big prevalent thing that is in everyone's society, especially women. Women deal with a lot of self-hate because women don't understand how important, how beautiful they are, even though they work so hard to be this object of perfection or beauty, or smell nice, or have nice hair, and spend hours doing makeup or getting ready for something just to look good. And still at the end of all this preparation, they still don't think that they're just a beautiful shining diamond. This all comes from ingrained self-hate, from Nazi propaganda, from the brainwashing that they put into our parents' parents throughout societies from around the world. You're never good enough. You'll never amount to anything. These words that abusive parents will say when you're a child, and these words cut through the child's psyche like a knife. And through scientific experimentation on the human body and human psyche, well, the Nazis and many societies trying to control the world know this. And this is why there are so many dysfunctional families and dysfunctional organizations throughout the world that don't really teach people to love themselves and to be happy with who they are and what they have. This all comes from the self-hate syndrome that the Nazis perfected, because in actuality, when you get into the self-hate, the Nazis were the most prevalent of it. Because like I pointed out, Hitler was a Jew. His grandmother, a Jew. She had sex with a Rothschild, which out of this came a daughter, and this daughter gave birth to Adolf Hitler after she was married. So this is the chain of, the self-hatred that the Nazis actually perfected, because they had a man going around knowing that he was a Jew, spouting all of this anti-Semite stuff and all of this hatred for his own people. So then when you get into the Thule Society and the Bell Project and time travel, well, this is my hypothesis, and there are a few things that actually support it throughout history. Now, if you understand history and understand what power is, actual power is knowledge. This is why the Nazis went throughout the cities and towns that they raped and pillaged. Well, the things that they raped and pillaged first were the libraries and museums. Why? Because they wanted to control, understand knowledge and history, because they knew if you control knowledge and history, which comes from libraries and museums, you control the future. So this is my hypothesis. Now, I hypothesize that the Nazis perfected the Bell Project, which the Bell Project was the study of vertical lift, the study of levitation, the study of time travel, and the study of UFOs, that's unidentified flying objects, doesn't have anything to do with aliens. And another thing that I have come to find that is pretty factual is two major facts. The vertical lift technology that was perfected by German scientists was based on a magnetic engine that was a spinning mechanism. Now, some of the things that I found out is when this engine was perfected and when it was actually put in a sphere-shaped ship, within this ship, when it was turned on, it would vibrate and in a sense be out of time. Now what I mean by out of time is, well, let me help you get a visual picture. We all know the Flash, correct? Well, if you ever read about the Flash and know how fast he can travel and how fast he can run, and sometimes you would know that Flash could like move through walls because he would be vibrating, his cells would be vibrating so fast he could move through solid objects. Well, the Nazis actually built a machine that could pretty much do this, that could vibrate and move faster than sound. Now, say you have an object that's, say, 1/4 of an inch away from where it started, and this object is moving back and forth, or maybe in a circle, faster than light. Now, they figured out how to do this. Well, when you get a magnet and you push two opposite sides of a magnet together, what happens? They push away from each other. So what if you have a magnet that's positively charged in the center and then surrounded at little points to give it a push around it, negatively charged, and then when you turn the negative charge on, it just starts the positive charge spinning. This is basically what their magnetic motors consisted of. Now I hope you start to really understand and see what I'm getting at. So to control something like this, you actually control time. You're moving faster than time. So there are rumors that in the Bell Project that the Nazi bell, actually during some experimentation just disappeared. No one knows what happened to it. So then there are other rumors that when was Roswell? I think Roswell was like 1954. The bell during the Nazi occupation disappeared and appeared over Roswell and it crashed. And maybe this is the biggest secret of the American government because they actually captured Nazi technology. Who knows? Well, Roswell, we do know, was completely hidden, was the biggest lie and cover up. So who really knows what happened, what it's all about? But one thing that we do know is the Nazis did have control of being great hypnotists, great brainwashers. These are some of the things that they practiced. So then, let me get to some alarming things that may make some bells set off in your head. So what if they actually perfected time travel? And what if they were going into these libraries to study about the places they wanted to go to actually go back and change history? Now, in Samaria, if you don't know where Samaria is exactly where America started to attack right after the whole Osama bin Laden scandal and the 9/11 scandal that was actually done by the Nazi, CIA, Bush, Jesuit, Pope, Freemason, Illuminati organization. There's plenty of proof that they did it. If you haven't seen September Clues, if you haven't seen Loose Change, The Final Cut, if you really haven't seen movies scientifically proving that it was them, it wasn't Osama bin Laden. Technically it was Osama bin Laden because Osama bin Laden was in bed with the Bushes since the 80s in Arbrusto Energies. Osama bin Laden's father, Osama bin Laden's wife's father was the biggest investor into Arbrusto Energies. Osama bin Laden's CIA and FBI cover name was Tim Osman. The CIA trained Al-Qaeda. I call them CIA Al-Qaeda because they were actually trained under the secret disclosure that they were being trained to go in and destabilize Saddam Hussein, and the CIA says that they lost control of them and they did the whole 9/11 thing, and it's bullshit. Because Tim Osman, that's Osama bin Laden, was in a hospital in Florida 2 weeks after 9/11. Now, Jeb Bush at the time was the governor of Florida. He's also the biggest reason why Bush won the election, because if you remember, it took 2 to 3 days to count the votes during the Bush and Gore election, and the deciding state that decided that was Florida. Again, Jeb Bush. Again, Florida. Again, hiding Tim Osman, Osama bin Laden. So they're all in on it together. The Arabs, the oil smugglers. Now, I would like to bring your attention to Somalia because there's an old story about the Somalians saying back during their time UFOs came and it was an appearance of the white gods. So maybe these white gods were time-traveling Nazis that actually went back to the time of Samaria, the time of the original Muhammad, and maybe left one of their people there. Now, if you know about the Muslim religion, there are two Muhammads. There's the first Muhammad, which was of Afro descent, which is dark brown skin, and then there's the second Muhammad that came along and changed everything and favored it in the way of the Arabs, the rich ones today, the ones that have the harems, the ones that kidnap women and children and take them and keep them in their harems and do whatever they want, the ones that started the Nation of Islam, which, if you don't know the difference between the Nation of Islam and Islam, there's a big difference. If you don't know the story of Malcolm X and how he found out the hard way what was the big difference between Islam and the Nation of Islam, and then when he found out the Nation of Islam and the American government had him killed after his trip from Mecca, once you really start to understand the big picture. So the second Muhammad is of light skin. Now, if you understand the name Aryan race, the word Aryan is Arabic in descent. It's an Arabic word. Then when you really start to study what the Nazis actually did and stealing and borrowing things from other cultures like the Hindu culture, because during Constantine's reign, before he started the Roman Catholic Church, he was a Hindu pagan. Hinduism was the religion that was practiced in Rome. So then when you get into Hinduism and how the Nazis took the Hindu sign and inverted it, and we know it as a swastika, It's from the Hindus, it's very old. And then they took teachings from the Bhagavad Gita of the blue-skinned gods and the gods with the blonde hair and blue eyes. All of this comes from the Bhagavad Gita. And the Nazi superialism and the imperialism with the blonde hair and blue eyes and the revamp of the white gods. This all comes from the Bhagavad Gita, which I've never seen a light-skinned Hindu. But then in the time of the Romans, these are the pagan traditions that they follow. So when you really start to get a big picture of history, so what if the Nazis went back in time and started putting their educated men, just drop one off, and throughout time, we can see it now, they became prophets. You can see it in the Muslim religion. There's the new Muhammad, and when this Muhammad came, it started a complete war that goes on today in the Muslim community. So when you really start to understand what has possibly happened, you can start to ask your question, okay, what if this is a possibility? How far did they actually go? Did they actually go back to the time of Christ and change things and try to do things and try to manipulate history and put falsified history of things that their time travelers went back and changed? And we can see the changes right now, because you got to understand, if you were to go back to the time of Christ or to the time of Muhammad, the real one, or the time of Buddha, and change things, you wouldn't even notice. You wouldn't even see anything of what happened, because those changes would be instantaneous right now. Those changes would have been being taught to us and passed down throughout history, and we would never ever suspect anything. This is the power of time travel, and it is very, very serious. So if you really start to understand, maybe why America is attacking Somalia, maybe they're trying to hide the facts of what they did. Maybe they're trying to wipe away the artifacts of the second Muhammad, using people like Osama bin Laden that followed the second Aryan Muhammad's teachings, because in all honesty, the Nazis and a lot of the Muslims are in it together because they have everything to gain. World control, you get as many women as you want, you control the oil, you control the heroin, you control the knowledge. And then when you get into the Freemason society, and then when you get into the Mason society, and the Shriners, and then the Moors, and the war that's been going on amongst all these societies, and then you really start to understand that the 36-degree European Freemason organization was actually just taught 36 degrees, when the Greeks were taught how to read and write and taught masonry by the Nuwabians in Timbuktu, that is in the time of Kish. This is before Kish was developed and grew into what you know as Egypt, before the Nuwabians left Egypt because the teachings became corrupt and paganistic. So if you really don't understand what's been going on, or the sacred orders of how it's been passed down, Moors, Shriners, Masons, and then the European Freemasons, because Freemasons are European in descent, which was vamped and started from the Bauer family. Sir Bauer, he was a thief, started the Illuminati, so-called, in the House of the Green Shield in Germany. then changed his name to Rothschild, which is spelled Rothschilds, after studying the original Nubian Afro-Chinese family, which is also the Rothschilds, which is spelled Rauthschilds, which dates pre-Ming Dynasty. So he just stole this name. The Templars were called heretics because they did not believe in Christ, because what they found, or so they say, was something giving validity that, Christ wasn't who they thought he was or what he was. And this was shown to them and given to them by Muslims. So then the Muslims taught the Templars about money and numbers and all this, and the Templars started the first form of banking. And then here you go, the European Freemasons get their power, but they got it from the Muslims. And then they were crucified because they were they were believed to be pagans. They were burned. So then, if you study history, the Nazis restarted the Templar Order as the New Templar Order in Bavaria. And everyone knows, Bavarian Illuminati, the European Illuminati, the European Freemasons. But what people don't understand is the word Freemasons, that is the Europeans, Bavarian Illuminati, saying that they're free from the orders of the Masons. That's why they call themselves Freemasons. There's nothing free. You got to pay up sometime. Freemasons. So if you really start to understand what their power was and what they were doing with the real society and time travel and possibly going back in time and changing things and showing up in specific points in time and maybe leaving one of their men there with the right books and all the teachings, and him studying it in secret to become a false prophet, to actually start control of a religion. And after 100 years, 200 years, guess who's in power? Well, let me paint a hypothetical picture that me and my friends like to do when we were growing up. Say I'm recording these videos right now, and I start to get a following of 100 people. That 100 people turns into 1,000 people, then 10,000 people, and say 2 years. And then say 10 years turns into millions of people following my words. Who am I? I'm no one. I'm just trying to enlighten people. Well, this whole scenario is very possible. You can see it with the Prophet Muhammad and then the second Prophet Muhammad, which forbid any pictures of Muhammad being shown. Why would you do that? Because then, people would actually start to see there are two Muhammads. There's the Afro one and then there's the Aryan one. Who came first? What's the Muslim holy war about? That's what it's about. So then you start to understand what is the difference between lies and man-made lies and truth. What's the difference? Well, Christ. Mel Gibson, in his movie The Passion, swears that, Christ spoke Aramaic. It's a lie, he didn't. Christ spoke Hebrew. Why would he speak Aramaic? He was born and died a Hebrew. This is proven. I mean, even in the Bible, they don't talk about how Joseph married a second time, and Mary, Yeshua's mother, was actually a young bride, a virgin bride, but Joseph had kids from his first family. So when Yeshua was born, his disciples were actually his real blood half-brother and sisters that were very jealous of him. One of them so jealous, they went to Constantine after he walked, their descendants, helped start the Catholic Church. I mean, do you remember when he walked, his sign was the fish? He didn't have anything to do with a crucifix. That's all Roman Catholic teachings. So if you really want to follow his true teachings and when he walked and what he believed in, when he died, it was a fish. And that's it. It was people that came along 300 years after him that started the crucifix. Oh, he believed in the crucifix. Well, what happened during that 300 years? Well, Rome crucified many fish believers on a cross because they believed in his teachings and followed his teachings. These people had to meet in underground places of secrecy for 300 years to pass on his teachings. So why do you think so much has been changed? I mean, how can you take a man that believed in a fish and could walk on water, could heal people, take that idea of that man and then give him the belief of a crucifix that billions and billions of men and women lost their lives on, and worship this thing like it is an instrument of God? And so much blood, innocent blood, has been spilled on it, and especially the people that followed his teachings. By the sign of the fish, they were crucified even after him. How could you give something like this, a prayer, or even believe that it is an instrument of God? The cross is very old. The cross predates Christ. I mean, the cross is the unification of the vertical and horizontal, the perfection of the human creation. If you stand with your legs side to side, straight up, and your arms left to right spread out, you form naturally a cross. You are the cross. So what the Romans did is they actually took you, the perfect cross, and then crucified you on a cross and tainted and spilled your blood. Now, I strongly urge you to research the difference between a crucifix and a cross. Trust me, you will be reading a lot longer about the cross because the history of the cross is a billion times more than the crucifix, because it is much older and you can find it throughout many societies, throughout civilization and throughout the world. So then when you really start to understand and ask yourself, what has been changed, what has been hidden, and what are these motherfuckers doing right now to hide the fact that they possibly went back in time and put one of their Nazis in a specific place and having knowledge and having power to actually control, manipulate, hypnotize people, maybe Nazi weapons, who knows, going back in time and putting these men in these places of power, and now you can actually see them now. So then when you get into the Muslims and the Bushes and the Illuminati and the Aryans, which the word Aryan is Arabic, all being in the same bed together, CIA, all of that stuff, CIA created by the Skull and Bones. The Skull and Bones has put every president in the White House for the last, 30, 40 years? Every president has been a bonesman. Do you think that's a coincidence? Do you think it's a coincidence that the CIA was created shortly after the Nazi scientists were brought over to the United States under Operation Paperclip? Then the U.S. gets an SS type organization, and they call it the CIA, the Central Intelligence. The Central Intelligence of the world, which George Bush, who's a fucking Nazi, both of them, George Bush Sr. was the head of the CIA before he just stepped down from the CIA and became president. Do you think this is a coincidence that Prescott Bush was caught sending millions and millions of dollars to the Nazis and got caught and lost the Skull and Bones Bank of New York because the money got traced back to them? Do you think it's a coincidence that the company IBM was the sole controller and creator and reason why the Hebrews had the tattoos on their arm? Because IBM built the hole punch machine with the hole punch cards with the numbers on them that you just stick the card in, and the little metal pieces fall through the holes in the card to read the card so they can keep track of all the Hebrews. Do you think it's a coincidence that IBM is the sole manufacturer of the radio frequency identifier chip of today, these so-called chips that they want us to put under our skin to have all our information that you can read and purchase things? It's like a digital credit card. This is the mark of the beast. Do you think it's a coincidence that people claim to be kidnapped by UFOs/aliens and they get microchips put in them to tag them and keep watch of them? Why would real aliens need this technology? They're psychic. They have powers that are beyond a stupid microchip under your freaking skin. This is all Nazi technology. Open your eyes to the truth. This is how I put it all into one bowl for you to take a sip of it and to understand the possibilities of what's going on. Please research history. Please get educated. Please have deep thoughts with friends and throw out these ideas, because you never know what you may come up with and a greater understanding of the big picture. I am Zakaos. I'm a DJ, I'm a poet, I'm a writer. I'm a searcher of absolute pure truth, because this is what I ask God to do for me. Give me the eyes to see, to understand. And this is what I share with you, and this is my understandings of what I believe and what I think is possibly going on. It's Sunday. Don't forget to bless your food. Don't forget to send love and blessings to everyone that you love and care for. And this is how I do it. I love each and every one of you. Thank you for your time. And to the special ones in my life, thank you, bless you. I would be nothing without you. I love you more than I could possibly ever say. Have a beautiful day. Enjoy your Sunday. Peace. Hello, beautiful people. I'd like to talk about a subject that I find rather fascinating, that I always have since I was a kid. Two things that the American public has been fascinated with on TV and throughout our history, from literature and many things written. That's flight, and then within flight having to do with unidentified flying objects, dating back to the time of Icarus, the old story when the boy built wings and flew so close to the sun, the wax on his wings melted and he died. He fell. And time travel. The book The Time Machine was one of the best books I'd ever read, and it starts to really open your eyes to the possibilities and the dangers of time travel. And there have been movies like The Butterfly Effect and all of these things about time travel. Well, the reason why I'm recording this video is because I wanted to talk about a supposed hypothesis that I had. I had a dream, and I was debating whether to talk about this or not, but why not? Fuck it. Somebody has to. No one actually has, and I think a lot of people are actually afraid to say it because of the possibilities and the ramifications of it. But from what I've been studying, in the Nazi Bell Project, that is the project where the Nazis, and the Thule Society, and the Vril Society, these are the three chains of command in the Nazi society. First, you have the front guys, which are the Nazis, the SS, which everybody blames for. That was her town, and he blew up the library to burn any facts that he was actually related to the Hebrew bloodline and the Anasazi Rothschilds. So in the Nazi occupation, what you actually have is the so-called imperialist Jews that started communism in Russia, and then they saw communism didn't work, so then they went to Germany and started their new movement, the socialist movement. And then they found Hitler, and then, they have Nazism. These are all the Rothschilds, these are all the Freemason societies, the people that are behind all the wars and everything that you thought different people had a hand in. Well, they have a hand in it. So in the Nazi occupation, what you have is the so-called imperialist Jews experimenting on the so-called unfit Hebrews of Russia, of Eastern Europe, from around the world. So they claim to, hate Jews. Well, I'm an Afro-American man, and one of the biggest problems in the Afro-American society that they've ingrained into this society, because we got this from them, because this is what they do in our society, it's called self-hate. So this is a very big, prevalent thing that is in everyone's society, especially women. Women deal with a lot of self-hate because women don't understand how important, how beautiful they are, even though they work so hard to be this object of perfection or beauty or smell nice or have nice hair and spend hours doing makeup or getting ready for something just to look good. And still at the end of all this preparation, they still don't think that they're just a beautiful shining diamond. This all comes from ingrained self-hate everything. Then you have the Thule Society, which is the inner chain of command behind the Nazis, that are not as secret as the Nazis, but are actually more secret than the Nazis, but close-knit. And then within the Thule Society, the people that control the Thule Society is the Vril Society, the secret society behind the Thule Society and the Nazi Society. The power behind the power behind the power. Things that I've studied and uncovered while studying the Vril is that they possibly discovered time travel. One of the things that I do know is after Hitler cracked the DNA code from experimenting on his own people, they disappeared. And what I mean by Hitler experimenting on his own people, most people don't know, is Hitler was a Rothschild. He was the grandson of one. His grandmother was a Jew. First town he attacked